Hey guys, it's Mike Monty, one half of Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast. And we want to reach out to all the fans out there who have supported our show to say thank you. Thank you for making 2021 one of our best years. And one of our best years was because of Anchor. Anchor, the way that you can have your voice heard. You can be just like us. Record your own podcast. Use the Anchor tools to edit your podcast. Use it on a phone. Use it on your computer. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all with Anchor, they're totally free. So be just like Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast, Monty and the Pharaoh. We're looking together for a great 2022. We've got huge guests coming on board. Oh, yeah. You probably wonder why Jimmy's not here right now. Well, he's prepping for one of the best interviews we're about to have, and we're going to surprise someone with. So hang aboard with us, and don't forget, be like us and use Anchor.
Tired of that same old breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Same old tasting scrambled eggs, burger, that dinner steak, ribs, or pork chops? Why not add a little bit of spice or just a touch of heat to make the difference? Change that scrambled egg with a little bit of Johnny Fabulous's John Cena Sr.'s $1 Million Jalapeno Hot Sauce. Great on burgers, steaks, chops, and those barbecued ribs.
Tommy Cairo. And when I walk down that aisle this Saturday night at the ECW Arena, I want each and every one of you to rise, get up off your feet, and pay homage to my new manager, the Virgin Princess Angel.
Wasn't my fault, I just couldn't win. The things that I said, they hurt you again. And if you don't let me down easy, always on the run, with the backs up against it all. No need to lose your mind, so just let it pass on. It wasn't my fault, I just couldn't win. The things that I said, they hurt you again. And if you don't let me down easy,
Good evening and welcome to Wrestling Rewind. I am your host, Angel Amoroso, and I am joined by my co-host, the Iron Man, Tommy Cairo.
What's
Tommy? And this evening on Wrestling Rewind's Wrestling Archives, we are going to take you back and review a list of wrestling promoters in the United States and beyond. So you get a little educated on who the promotions were and up to current, who they still are. So let's get right into that without any wait, because it's a pretty long list. So the list of professional wrestling promoters in the United States starts here at the pioneer era, 1900s to the 1940s.
Okay.
So let's get right into that.
All right.
This section it lists notable professional wrestling promoters, especially those of the former Burns era and the Frank Gotch and Goldust Trio eras, active prior to formation of the NWA Wrestling Alliance in 1948. The dark red indicates members of the National Wrestling Alliance, and the light red indicates later members of the National Wrestling Alliance. So this gets pretty detailed on history of promoters. So the first one we start off with is Haywood Allen. Years active, 1905 to 1949. He ran Louisville, Kentucky, and the promotion was Midwest Wrestling Alliance from 1935 to 1947. And then we got Perry Bash, years active 1941 and 1948. He ran in Wichita, Kansas.
No name.
Yeah, no name. I guess he's just one of those guys who just,
Live pro wrestling. That's it.
Exactly. Then we got Paul Bowser. He ran from 1886. I'm sorry. He was born in 1886. He ran from 1910 to 1960 in Boston, Massachusetts, for the AWA, American Wrestling Association, 1922 to 1960. It's pretty amazing. See a little information on Paul Bowser there. He was a professional wrestling promoter, from the 1920s to the 1950s.
Wow.
He was also a wrestler. There's a long list here. Next, we got Orville Brown. He ran from 1931 to 1957 in St. Louis, Missouri, under Midwest Wrestling Association from 1948 to 1963. And then we got Jim Crockett Sr., running from 1931 to 1973 out of Charlotte, North Carolina, Jim Crockett Promotions, 1931 to 1973. Right. Then we got Price Dalton, running from 1944 to 1945 out of Tampa, Florida. No name. Then we got Max Clayton, one of those guys highlighted in red, from 1926 to 1957. He ran from Omaha, Nebraska, the National Wrestling Alliance Omaha chapter, from 1948 to 1957. And then we got Jimmy Demetrio Dematros. He ran from 1915 to 1973. Wow. In Madison.
A lot of gray hair.
Yeah, Madison, Wisconsin. International Wrestling Promotion from 1924 to 1973. Wow. And then we got Ray Fabiani, ran from 1923 to 1969 in Philadelphia. Wow. All right.
I'm going to have to look some of these up to see if there's any footage.
I know. Then we got Clayton Fisher. He ran from 1938 to 1940 in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in Untitled promotion. Then we got Pinky George. Paul L. George ran from 1931 to 1976 in Des Moines, Iowa, Midwest Wrestling Association, which was NWA Central States from 1948 to 1958. And then we got Nick Goulas, who ran from 1937 to 1980 in Nashville, Tennessee, as an NWA Mid-America from 1953 to 1980, then the Mid-South Wrestling Association, then the Mid-South Pro Wrestling in 1982, and then South Wrestling in 1982. So he changed the name a few times. I guess it was necessary. Then we got Al Haft, who ran from 1914 to 1965 in Columbus, Ohio, under the Midwest Wrestling Alliance banner from 1930 to 1948.
Very, very big name in promoting.
Right. Then we got Virgil Hamlin. He ran from 1922 to 1957 in Portland, Oregon, the Pacific Coast Wrestling from 1922 to 1957. Then we got Chris Jordan, who ran from 1906 to 1940 in Birmingham, Alabama, and it was a Chris Jordan Promotions from 1932 to 1940. Then we got Paul Jones, ran from 1929 to 1984. Atlanta, Georgia, as Georgia Championship Wrestling, 1944 to 1984.
Wow.
All right, Paul Jones. And then we got Al Karazik. From 1922 to 1962, he ran in Honolulu, Hawaii, the 50th State Big Time Wrestling from 1936 to 1962.
He must have got run out by the Mayavias because
they're
the only ones I remember.
Sure, they're coming up. Then we got Gus Karras. He ran from 1918 to 1976 in St. Joseph, Missouri, Caris Sports Promotion from 1933 to 1948, and then he ran under NWA Central States from 1949 to 1976. And then we got Fred Kohler, also known as Fred Koch, ran from 1925 to 1965 in Chicago, and as NWA Chicago from 1949 to 1963, and then the International Wrestling Association from 1963 to 1965. And then we got Doc Crone, John Crone, who ran from 1896 to 1934. Those are the ones I like to hear. He ran in Chicago with a no-name promotion. Harry Landry ran the Friars Point, Mississippi, under the National Wrestling Association from 1932 to 1946. And then we got another red guy. Harry Light ran from 1945 to 1965 in Detroit, Michigan, under Harry Light Wrestling Offices, 1945 to 1948, and under NWA Detroit from 1948 to 1958. And then we got Bob Lush, Robert A. Lush. He ran from 1965 to 1989 in Chicago under American Wrestling Association from 1965 to 1985, and the World Wrestling Association from 1965 to 1989. And then we got Joe
Malowitz.
All right. He ran from 1922 to 1962 in San Francisco, California, under NWA San Francisco from 1949 to 1962.
Wow.
Sam Marbarger from Indianapolis, Indiana, ran National Wrestling Association. Ed McLemore ran from 1940 to 1966 in Houston, Texas. Southwest Sports from 1940 to 1966.
Huge name.
Yeah. Then we got the Jess McMahon, ran from 1915 to 1954. Roderick McMahon, otherwise known, ran in Long Island, New York, Capital Wrestling Corporation from 1915 to 1954.
That's Vince's grandfather.
Right. All right. And then we got Sam Munchnick, Jesse Munchnick. He ran from 1932 to 1982 in St. Louis, Missouri, for the St. Louis Wrestling Club from 1942 to 1982.
Huge player.
Yeah. And then we got
right here.
Mont, Joseph Raymond Mont, ran from 1902 to 1965 for the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, 1963 to 1965. And we got Tom Pax. He ran from 1922 to 1948 in St. Louis, Missouri at the Tom Pax Sports Enterprise, Inc. from 1922 to 1948. And then we move on to Jack Pfeffer. Ran from 1924 to 1967 in New York, San Diego, California, and Toledo, Ohio. He really spread himself out.
That guy. Everybody, I remember hearing a lot of stories about him.
Let's see if there's any stories about Jack Pfeffer. Let's see. He was an American professional wrestling promoter during the mid-20th century. He pioneered an early form of sports entertainment, and he was one of the first promoters to visualize pro wrestling business in the mold theater. However, he developed an infamous reputation when he exposed the sport's inner secrets to the mainstream press, in spite of his attack that nearly destroyed the entire business. There he goes.
He was that guy was something else, boy.
Yeah, he was a Russian.
Yeah.
And then we have John Regis, who ran from in Memphis, Tennessee, NWA Mid America from 1953 to 1980.
It's a long time.
Yeah, and then we got Bill Salad. He ran from 45 to 49 in Tampa, Florida, obviously under no name. Then we have Morris Siegel, who ran from 1929 to 1966 in Houston, Texas, from the Southwest Sports Arena in 1929 to 1966. Oh. And then we got George Simpson. ran from 35 to 64 in Kansas City, Missouri, the NWA Central States, 1948 to 1964. Moving on, we got Tony
Stetcher.
or Anton Stetcher. He ran from 33 to 54 in Minneapolis, Minnesota for the Minneapolis Boxing and Wrestling Club from 33 to 48. And then the NWA Minneapolis from 48 to 54.
Right.
Then we got George Tahay,
Never heard of him.
Boston, Massachusetts, ran AWA, American Wrestling Association from 1919 to 1922. That's why we never heard of him.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we got Adam Weissmuller, ran from 1930 to 1937 in Detroit, Michigan. No name. Ed White ran from 1914 to 1943 in Chicago under the National Wrestling Association, 1919 to 1943. Then we got Bertram Willoughby. He ran in Dallas, Texas, Southwest Sports from 1936 to 1940. And then we move on to the territory era of 1940s to the 1980s. And let's see. This section, it lists notable professional wrestling promoters during the golden age of professional wrestling following the creation of the NWA in 1948. While most promoters operated specific wrestling territories as members of the NWA, a number of so-called outlaw promoters were also prominent during this period. So dark red indicates the founding members of the National Wrestling Alliance. Light red indicates the members of the National Wrestling Alliance. And green indicates the territory of promoters who are still active. Ring name. Okay. Dan Adams, years active, 89 to 2010. Ran in Wichita, Kansas under Sunflower State Wrestling from 1989 to 2010. Billy Anderson ran in 1974 and let me see, in San Bernardino, California under Western States Wrestling Association, 1988 to 1991, and then Empire Wrestling Federation in 1996. Then we got Ole Anderson, who ran from 67 to 93 in Atlanta, Georgia Championship Wrestling, 76 to 84. And then we got Max Andrews, ran from 91 to 92 in Dallas, Texas, Global Wrestling, 91 to 94. So then we got Bill Ash. He ran in 91, he ran in 80 and 81 in Wyoming as Rocky Mountain Wrestling in 1980 and 1981. And then we got Lynn Austin, Ron Lendowski, Panama City, Florida, Universal Wrestling Association in 1985. Then we got Ron Barner. He ran in 94 and 95 in Portland, Oregon as Oregon Pro Wrestling Federation in 94 and 95. And Bally Barnes, he just ran professional promotions in 1976. No other information given about him. Jack Barnett ran in New Jersey, Empire Wrestling Federation from 1983 to 1985.
I guess I missed him. I broke in 86. That's why.
Yeah, a lot of us did. Let's see. Then we got Jim Barnett, 1924. I'm sorry. He ran from 1949 to 2001.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. Chicago, Indianapolis, Indiana, NWA, Indianapolis, Detroit, Michigan, AWA, Melbourne, WCW, Atlanta, Georgia, at GCW. At NWA, Indianapolis, 1955 to 60, American Wrestling Alliance, 59 to 64, World Championship Wrestling, Australia, 64 to 74, and then Georgia Championship Wrestling from 73 to 84. So, wow, Jim Barnett, long career there. And then we got Fred Burrend. From 1985 to 1986, he ran in San Antonio as Texas All-Star Wrestling, just in 85 and 86. And then we got Barry Bernston, He ran from 73 to 1991 in Phoenix, Arizona as Universal Wrestling Association, and then Western States Wrestling Alliance from 73 to 1991.
Wow.
Then we got Jerry Blackwell, who ran from 87 to 90 in Atlanta, Georgia. Southern Championship Wrestling, 88 to 90, which is known better to people, I guess. And then Joe Blanchard ran from 1953 to 1985 in San Antonio, Texas, under Southwest Championship Wrestling. So let's see, 78 to 85.
And he put his son Tully in a major spot.
Right. And then Paul Bosch ran from 1932 to 1987 in Houston, Texas, under Houston Wrestling from 66 to 87. Marcel Beauvais ran in 1979 in Phoenix, Arizona, under International Wrestling Union. Just in 1983, though. Larry Bowling ran in 1989 in Logan, West Virginia, as American in International Wrestling, just in 1989. Yeah, Grace Brazil ran United Wrestling Association in 1983. John Brammer ran from 90 to 92 in Athens, Ohio, American Wrestling Federation, 90 to 92. And then we got Don Brinton, ran in 79 to 86 in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, as American Wrestling Association from 79 to 86, running Canada. It's kind of funny, right? And then we got Howard Brody, from 1990 to 2001, running from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He ran the Ladies Major League Wrestling, Wild Women of Wrestling from 1990 to 1993, and NWA Florida 1990 to 2002, and NWA Ring Warriors in 2010.
Nice.
And then we got Robert J. Brooks. He ran in 1989 in Bridgeview. Tri-State Wrestling in 1989. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what state that was. Then we move on to Rusty Brooks, ran from 1982 to 2013.
Maybe that's what made him drop dead. He just passed that poor guy.
Wow. In Davie, Florida, Independent Pro Wrestling Association, 88 to 2003. Wow. He was probably dealing with all those wrestlers driving him crazy. You know? And then we have Killer Tim Brooks. Let's see. From 1969 to 1997.
Wow.
Dallas Fort Worth, Texas, he ran in the North American Wrestling Alliance from 1990 to 1991. Okay. And then we got Fritz Burns, who ran from 1968 to 1994 in Lansing, Michigan, the Wolverine Wrestling Alliance, 1990 to 91, North American Wrestling from 91 to 91, Michigan Championship Wrestling from 97 to 1994. Wow. Okay. Wow. Then we got Richard Burns, ran in Massachusetts, the New England Wrestling Federation, United States Wrestling Federation from 82 to 85, then the Superstar Pro Wrestling in 2004, Star Wrestling in 1982, and American Wrestling Federation in 1986. So then we got Frankie Kane. He ran from 1960 to 1985 in Bainbridge, Georgia. He ran the Star Wrestling Federation in 1982, the American Wrestling Federation in 1986, and the Star Cavalcade Wrestling in 1988.
That's the Great Mephisto.
All right. And then we got George Cannon. He ran from 53 to 94 in Detroit, Michigan, and Winter, Ontario, as the Superstars of Wrestling Canadian Wrestling Association from 76 to 1983. And then we got Dick Karakoff, and he ran from 1988 to 2021 in Hagerstown, Maryland. And he runs under the National Wrestling League from 1988 to 2021. I'm guessing the only thing that stopped him was the current condition of the world.
sounds
So
like.
then we have Bill Carr. He ran in Southern California under Golden States Wrestling in 1987. Moving on to Tony Costa, ran in St. Louis, Missouri. He ran under Mid-Missouri Wrestling Association in 1985. And then we got John Kazana, ran from 59 to 74 in Knoxville, Tennessee, under NWA Mid-America, 59 to 74. Then we got Buddy Lee Cliff. He ran in Rockford and Peoria, Illinois, under the American Wrestling Association from 1960 to 1978. Then we got Mike Collins from Columbus, Ohio. Ohio Championship Wrestling, All-Star Wrestling Alliance, and American States Wrestling Alliance, 1988. Then we roll into Ricky Cortez. He ran from 68 to 94 in Lansing, Michigan, under the Wolverine Wrestling in 1977, Michigan Championship Wrestling 1977 to 1994. Wow. All right. And then we got Glenn Crocker, 1987 to 1997, ran in Smithfield, North Carolina, Carolina Championship Wrestling Alliance, 1987 to 1997. And then we got Jim Crockett Jr., ran from 1973 to 1988 from Charlotte, North Carolina, JCP Promotions, Jim Crockett Promotions from 1973 to 1988, and the World Wrestling Network in 1993. That was that joint show they tried to do with ECW, I believe.
Oh, really?
I believe so.
Oh, there you go. That's why it didn't work out.
Exactly. And then we got George Culkin. He ran from 73 to 88 in Jackson, Mississippi, as International Championship Wrestling from 73 to 80. Then we got Gil Culkin. He ran from 1973 to 1988 in Jackson, Mississippi, International Championship Wrestling from 73 to 80. Also, it's like Gil and George. I guess they were brothers. Mm-hmm. And we got Don Curtis, who ran from 1951 to 1981 in Jacksonville, Florida, as the World League Wrestling in 1981. And then we have Gene Dargan, who ran in 1962 out of Pittsburgh. He ran the Three Rivers Association from 77 to 79, and then Super Pro Wrestling in 1984. Then we move on to John Davenport, who promoted in Florida under Pro Wrestling Alliance in 1985. Bobby Davis from Dayton, Ohio, who promoted the Universal Wrestling Federation in 1971, and then Windy City Wrestling from 1988 to 2010. So Sam,
they were around for a long time.
Yeah, Sam DeCiro. And then we got Bobby D. Bobby Gene Bearden from Huntsville, Alabama. He ran South Wrestling in 1982. Then we got Steve DeVito from New York. He ran International Championship Wrestling in 1989. And then we got Dick the Bruiser, William Eflis. He ran from 1971 to 1990 in Detroit, Michigan, 71 to 74, Indianapolis, Indiana from 74 to 90, and it was the World Wrestling Association from 71 to 1990.
So they had to be competing with the Sheik. Same
Yes. Then we got Mickey DeFate from New York, running in New York. New Independent Wrestling Association from 1984 to 1985. Then we got Mike Donatelli, 1985 and 1985 to 1995 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, as the North American Wrestling, 1986 to 1995. Okay, Johnny Doyle ran from 36 to 68. Los Angeles under NWA Los Angeles, and Detroit and AWA, and Melbourne WCW. NWA Los Angeles was from 36 to 54, and the American Wrestling Alliance was from 59 to 64, and then World Championship Wrestling Australia from 64 to 68. And then we got DC Drake. Don Drake ran from 1978 to 1991 in the Lehigh Valley area as National Wrestling Federation from 86 to 94. And then we got John Dusek, ran from 1934 to 1972 in Omaha, Nebraska, for the National Wrestling Alliance, Omaha, 57 to 59, and the American Wrestling Association from 1960 to 1983. Chief J. Bragg ran from 1977 to 2011.
Wow.
North Carolina, SCW, King Mountain, North Carolina, the NCW, and Union, South Carolina, Spartanburg, South Carolina, the APW. The Southern Championship Wrestling from 83 to 90, the National Championship Wrestling from 90 to 93, and then Big Time Wrestling from 93 to 98, and American Pro Wrestling from 98 to, I guess, current.
Wow.
Cal Eaton ran from 1942 to 1966 in Los Angeles under the World Wrestling Association from 54 to 66. Then we got Dale Edwards that ran from 1971 to 2006. Wow, they really stayed loyal. He ran from Quad Cities, Iowa, and Illinois, Midwest Championship Wrestling from 84 to 86. That's a long run, Dale Edwards. George Hill was his actual name. And then we got Russ Edwards from Memphis, Tennessee, ran Mid-South Wrestling Association, Mid-South Wrestling in 1982. Then we got Joe Eugenio, 1988. He ran New Bedford, Massachusetts, New England Wrestling Association, 1988, and Yankee Pro Wrestling in the year 2000. A lot of these guys stayed on till current. And then we got the Sheik, Ed Farhat, ran from 49 to 98 in Detroit, Michigan, under NWA Detroit, 64 to 1980. Such a long run.
Yep.
Long run. So yeah, he had a lot of competition.
Stayed too long.
Woody Farmer is our next promoter. He ran from 1963 to 2008 in San Francisco, California. He had Bay Area Wrestling, 89.
There's a real good documentary on him, on that.
Really?
That federation. Excellent.
Awesome. Then we got Al Finn, who ran from 1953 to 1973 in Phoenix, Arizona, under World Athletic Association, 53 to 73. Then we have Donald Wayne Hatfield, ran from 1959 to 1978 in Dalton, Alabama, Gulf Coast Wrestling Association from 59 to 78. And then we also have Albert Lee Hatfield, that ran from 48 to 74. Same, Alabama, Gulf Coast Wrestling Association from 59 to 78. I assume they are brothers or husband and wife. Francis Fleischer ran from 64 to 1980 in Detroit, Michigan, in NWA Detroit, 64.
How does Sheik didn't run them out? I can't believe it.
I know. Well, he got to have some kind of competition to keep it, interesting. So then Bob Fraud ran Ohio Championship Wrestling from 1984 to 1985. And then we have Ed Francis running from 1946 to 1979 in Honolulu, Hawaii, the 50th state Big Time Wrestling. It was from 1962 to 1979, which I was assumed the Maivias were, competition for that. Then we have Buddy Welsh, ran, from 1951 to 1981 from Honolulu. I'm sorry. He ran in the Gulf Coast Championship Wrestling from 1953 to 1959. And then we have Robert Welch, ran in 1970 NWA Southeastern Championship Wrestling in 1980 and U.S.A. Wrestling in 1987 to 1988. So, and then Ron Fuller ran from 1974 to 1989 in Knoxville, Tennessee, the NWA Southeastern Championship Wrestling in 1980, and then Continental Championship Wrestling from 1986 to 1988, and then again Continental Wrestling Federation from 1988 to 1999. And then we got Charlie Fulton. Gary L. Fulton ran from 68 to 85 in Mansfield, Ohio. It was Ohio Championship Wrestling, All-Star Wrestling Alliance, and all American States Wrestling Alliance from 1988 to unknown. Then we got Dory Funk, who promoted from 1946 to 1973 in Amarillo, Texas, as NWA Western States Sports, 53 to 73.
Wow.
Then we got Vern Gagne, who promoted from 1959 to 1991 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, for the Boxing and Wrestling Club of Minnesota from 59 to 91, and then NWA Minneapolis, Minnesota, 1959 to 1960, and American Wrestling Association from 1960 to 1991. Vern Gagne, long run. And then we got Dennis Galam, running from 1985 to 1990 in Woodbridge, New Jersey, as the Universal Wrestling Alliance from 1985 to 1990.
Some of the first people I worked for.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that. And then we got Bob Geigel, who ran from 1950 to 1988 in Kansas City, Missouri, as NWA Central States. From 1963 to 1986, and then in 1988, and then the World Wrestling Alliance in 1988. Seems like a lot of people have used the World Wrestling Alliance and Worldwide Wrestling Alliance in years.
I mean, how many combinations can you come up with? You know?
Exactly. Then we have Ronnie Garvin. Roger Barnes ran from 1962 to 2003 in Knoxville, Tennessee. All-Star Championship Wrestling from 79 to 80. Tennessee Mountain Wrestling from 95 to 2001. And then Ron's Championship Wrestling from 2002 to 2003. Wow.
Maybe it was the name that hurt him on that one.
Oh, right. Phil Golden ran in Kentucky, All-Star Wrestling from 1972 to 1974. And then we got David Gould, who ran in 80 and 81 in Kentucky and Boise, Idaho, All-Star Wrestling from 72 to 74, and Diamond Belt Championship Wrestling from 1980 to 1981. And then we move on to Eddie Graham. Edward Gossett ran from 1947 to 1985 in Tampa, Florida, Championship Wrestling Florida from 1970 to 1985. And then we have Mike Graham, Michael Gossett, who ran from 1972 to 1992 in Tampa, Florida, Florida Championship Wrestling 88 to 89, and Professional Wrestling Federation 1989 to 1991. Then we got Jerry Gray, who ran in 1981 in Florida under Southern Wrestling Federation in 88 to 93, and then World Pro Wrestling in 94.
He was like a jobber for WCW or something.
Okay, yeah, sounds familiar. Then we got John Guglin, who ran out of Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, the American Wrestling Association from 1960 to 1986. It's great when American wrestling is in Canada. I love it.
Yeah.
And Gunkel ran from 1972 to 1974 in Atlanta, Georgia, All South Wrestling, 72 to 74, Alliance, 72 to 74. Then we got Jody Hamilton, who ran from 1955 to 1988 in Georgia. It's a Deep South Wrestling. So, yeah, 86 to 88.
That's the famous assassin, Jody Hamilton.
Jody Hamilton. And then we got Gary Hart, who ran from 1963 to 2004 in Dallas, Texas. It's a Texas Wrestling Federation in 90 and 91, World Class 2, The Next Generation in 1997. And yeah.
How does that span all those years then? 63 2004, and then when you go across, it's only a few
Maybe it's
years.
just separate shows, like he
Yeah,
ran
maybe.
one once in a while. And then we have Billy Jack Haynes, William Haynes III, ran in 1982 to 1996 in Portland, Oregon, under Oregon Wrestling Federation in 1988 and Oregon Pro Wrestling Federation in 1994.
I didn't know he lasted that long.
I didn't know that either. Mark Henderson ran from 1982 to the year 2000 in North Carolina under North American Wrestling Alliance, 82 to 2000. That's a long span there.
Yeah.
And then we have Jesse Hernandez, who ran in 1981 out of San Bernardino, California, the Western States Wrestling Association, 88 to 91. And then I can't read this. Empire Wrestling.
I can't see it, yeah.
1996. Then we got Dwayne Hoberg, who ran from 1960 to 1984 in Fargo and Moorhead under American Wrestling Association from 1960 to 1984.
Wow.
Then we got Johnny Hunter, who ran from 1966 to 1989 in Lexington, North Carolina, Eastern Wrestling Association, 74 to 89.
Yeah,
wow.
He really had to buck a lot of people because that was considered really an outlaw promotion. And they were running around all the other big promotions, and he lasted that long anyway. So it's pretty amazing.
Okay. Then we got Tom Jeanette, promoted from 1983 to 1993 in New Haven, Connecticut, the North Championship Wrestling from 83 to 99. And then we have Jerry Jarrett. He ran from 1965, the Memphis, Tennessee area, Continental Wrestling Association from 77 to 78, United States Wrestling Association from 88 to 96, and then Total Nonstop Action in the year 2000. Then we got Paul Jones. Paul Frederick ran from 1968 to 1992 in Charlotte, North Carolina, the South Atlantic Pro Wrestling Federation, 1990 to 1992. And then we got Dexter Justice Smithfield that ran from 1987 to 1997 in Smithfield, North Carolina. Carolina Championship Wrestling Alliance in 87 to 97.
Huh?
Yeah, good stuff. And then we got Wally Carbo. Ran from 1952 to 1985 from Minneapolis, Minnesota, out of the boxing club in 52 to 85. And then NWA Minneapolis from 52 to 1960. American Wrestling Association from 1960 to 1985. So he kept dropping and then picking up where he left with something else year by year. This guy stayed busy.
Yeah, my guess is with these ones that you see they run out of one area and they last so long because they're in rural areas where there's nothing else going on. So everybody's going to the matches.
Exactly. And then we got Craig Kay, ran from 90 to 93 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, the ladies Major League Wrestling, and Wild Women of Wrestling from 1990 to 1993. And then we got Steve Kern. I don't know. I clicked on it. We know he's one of the fabulous ones. We don't have to do his history. He ran from 1972 to 2013 in Tampa, Florida, under Florida Championship Wrestling, 88 to 89, Professional Wrestling Federation, 88 to 91, and Florida Championship Wrestling, 2007 to 2013. And Steve Kern, a wrestler, and
that must have been a new incarnation of the championship wrestling from Florida because the old one ended in the 80s sometime.
Right. And then we have Jerry Kennett, who ran from 1978 to 1993 in Smithfield, North Carolina, Carolina Championship Wrestling Alliance from 1987 to 1997. Then we got Duke Kamuka, who ran from 47 to 91 in Tampa, Florida, Championship Wrestling Florida, 85 to 87.
That's Pat Tanaka's father.
Oh, okay. Awesome. And then we got Lou Coakley, who ran from 1989 to 1994 in Ohio, the Great Lakes Wrestling Association, 89 to 94. And then Killer Kowalski, Walter Kowalski, ran from 1947 to 2008 in Reading, Massachusetts, under the International Wrestling Federation, 79 to 96. And then we got Jim Lancaster, who ran in 81 to 92 and then 2004 in Ohio as the Midwest Championship Wrestling, 1981 to 1992.
Big Jim Lancaster. That's who he was.
Oh, okay. Then we got Gloria Gale Lane. She ran from 1991 to 1992 in Fresno, California, the West Coast Wrestling Alliance, 91 and 92. Then we got Carl Lauer, who ran from 1983 to 1990 in Los Angeles, California Pro Wrestling, 83 to 90. That's a long time for California. Yeah. We got Jerry Lawler, started promoting in 1970 in Memphis, Tennessee, under the United States Wrestling Association. So until current, 1970 to probably current. Then we got Gene LaBelle, who ran from 1966 to 1982 in Los Angeles, California, NWA Hollywood Wrestling, 1966 to 1982. And then we got Sandy Lee, ran from 1987 to 1997 in Smithfield, North Carolina, as the Carolina Championship Wrestling Alliance, 1987 to 1997. Then we got Dave Leahy, 1988 to 1993, ran from Richmond, Virginia, the Virginia Wrestling Association, 88 to 93, long run. Antone Leon, ran from 1938 to 1982 in Southern California under Western States Alliance, 1981 to 1982. A lot of them used the Western, the Western States Alliance, right?
Yeah, I think they might have been a member of NWA, so they might have had other offices.
And then we got Don Lewin and Mark Lewin running. All right, Don ran from 1950 to 1983 in Dayton, Ohio, under Universal Wrestling Federation, 1971. And also Mark Lewin started in 1953 and lasted up to 1998 under the same banner.
That's Purple Haze.
Yes. And then we have Louis the Lip, ran from 1947 to 1977.
Wow, there's nothing else, huh?
Yeah, nothing else available, but hey, really. And then we got Mike London. He ran from 1950 to 1979 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. NWA Western States Sports from 51 to 79. Then we got Clarence Luttrell, who promoted from 49 to 1970 in Tampa, Florida, under Championship Wrestling Florida, 49 to 70. And we got John Cyclone McAlpine. He promoted from 62 to 64 in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, under American Wrestling Association, 62 to 64. And then we got Boris Malenko. Lawrence Simon promoted from 1957 to 1994 in Knoxville, Tennessee, and All-Star, and then Tampa, Florida. All-Star Championship Wrestling from 79 to 80, IWWA 1984, and Global Wrestling from 87 to 88. Championship Wrestling Federation in 1991. And yeah. All right, Boris Malenko had a lot going on. And then we got Dale Mann, Georgetown, Kentucky, Mountain Wrestling Alliance from 79 to 95.
Wow.
Ken Mantell, promoted from 1970 to 1991 in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, under Wild West Wrestling in 1988, World Class Championship Wrestling from 88 to 89. And then we got Pedro Martinez, who started promoting in the 1950s and ended in the 1970s. He was out of Buffalo, New York, under the National Wrestling Federation from 70 to 74 and the International Wrestling Association in 1975. Don Markson, let's see, he promoted out of Moline and Davenport. And so that was for the American Wrestling Association from 1963 to 1985.
Wow.
And then we had Jim Massengale. He promoted from 87 to 97 in North Carolina under Carolina Championship Wrestling Alliance. And then we got Hiro Matsuda, who promoted from 1957 to 1987 in Florida. So Championship Wrestling Florida from 85 to 87 was all Hiro.
Yeah.
All right. Rocky McGuire, promoted from 1959 to 1978 in Alabama, Gulf Coast Wrestling, Championship Wrestling, 68 to 78. And then we got Leroy McGurk, who started in 1933, ended in 1982 out of Oklahoma, NWA Tri-State, 58 to 82. Wow. And then we got David McLean, 1986 to 1992, and then 2000 2001 out of Las Vegas. He did Glow, and then Los Angeles. He did Wow, and let's see, Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, 1986 to 1992, and Women of Wrestling, 2000 to 2001.
I guess he liked his women.
Of course, they made him money. And then we got Vince McMahon Sr., 1954 to 1982. He ran Capital Wrestling Corporation from 53 to 63 and the Worldwide Wrestling Federation from 1963 to 1982. And then we have Vince McMahon, started running in 1969 nationally, the World Wrestling Federation Entertainment in 1982, the Raw brand in 2002, the SmackDown brand in 2002, the ECW brand from 2006 to 2012, and then Next in 2012. And then we have Peter Maivia, who ran from 1962 to 1982 in Honolulu, Hawaii, under NWA Polynesian Wrestling from 79 to 82.
Hi, Chief Peter Maivia.
And then we have Lee Maivia, also running from 1982 to 1988 in Honolulu, Hawaii, NWA Polynesian Wrestling, 82 to 88. And then we got Denny Million running out of Rye Cove, Virginia, All-American Championship Wrestling, 1988 to 1996. Then we got Bob Hamill, ran in 1983 under in Newport Richey, Florida, under All-American Championship Wrestling, 83 to 2013, and AMP Wrestling in 2013. Ernie Mohammed started promoting in 1954, stopped in 1973. He was out of Arizona with the World Athletic Association from 54 to 73.
Wow.
Then we got Jerry Monty, who started in 1966, ended in 1994 out of Hayward, California, with Pacific Coast Championship Wrestling. 91 and 92. So, and then we got Enzo Marabito out of New Jersey with Empire Wrestling from 83 to 85.
Wow.
And then we got Freddie Morton out of Columbia, Tennessee, with Mid-South Wrestling Association from 1991 to 1996.
Wow.
And then we have Mr. Ito. From 1996 to 1998, he promoted in Columbia, Tennessee, Mobile, Alabama. Yeah, I'm sorry. Mr. Ito, I'm sorry, just Mobile, Alabama. He ran the World Wrestling Organization in 1988.
Doesn't it make you wonder how everybody's a world, and are in like one little town?
Right, exactly. Then we have Bill Needham, who promoted out of Knoxville, Tennessee, All-Star Championship Wrestling from 1990 to 1992. And then we got Wayne Oberton, Professional Wrestling Promotions from 1976. And then we got Grady Odom, who promoted in Georgia All-Star Championship Wrestling in 1985 and Georgia Championship Wrestling in 2011. And then we run into Bob Orton Jr., who ran a show in 1972, I guess, in Knoxville, Tennessee for All-Star Championship Wrestling. Actually lasted from 1979 to 1980. Don Owen promoted shows from 1957 and 1992 in Portland, Oregon, under Pacific Northwest Wrestling, 57 and 92.
Wow, it's a long time.
Yeah. Joe Palumbo ran in San Bernardino, California under All California Championship Wrestling. 87 to 98. That's good. Let's see. Then we got Ira Parks ran from 1981 to 1990 from Columbia, South Carolina, under Atlantic Coast Wrestling from 1981 to 1990. That's a pretty long run. And then we got Al Patterson, who started running in 1979 and stopped in 1983 out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He ran the Superstars of Wrestling in 1982 and United Wrestling Association in 1983.
So, Angel, I got to interrupt you 1 minute. I don't know who it is, but somebody's looking to get on with us. I think he should be getting an email shortly.
All right.
That'll give you the link. So
we'll
see who it is.
We get to it. And then we got Joe Pedicino, who promoted from 1986 to 1994 in Atlanta, Georgia for SCW and GASW from Dallas, the GWF Global Wrestling Federation, Southern Championship Wrestling from 88 to 90, and Georgia All-Star Wrestling from 90 to 91. Joe Pedicino actually did a lot on our time. And then we got great.
He did a lot for everybody, you know.
He really did, honestly. Gray Pearson, promoted from 1992 to 1994 in Dallas, Texas, under Global Wrestling Federation. And then we have Angelo Poffo, who promoted from 1949 to 1991 in Lexington, Kentucky, for under International Championship Wrestling, 78 to 84. Wow. And then we got Buddy Porter. He ran from 1975 to 1995 in Kings Mountain, North Carolina, under the North American Wrestling Alliance, 82 to 95. And then we got Henry Raines, ran from 89 to 93 in Florida, under Suncoast Pro Wrestling. Heard of that?
Yeah, me too.
We got Bob Raskin. He ran the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania area as National Independent Championship Wrestling in 1985, and then the National Wrestling Federation from 86 to 88. And then we got Gene Reed from Denver, Colorado. He ran the American Wrestling Association from 1963 to 1985.
Wow,
so, and Roger Reed and Renee Reyes. Roger Reed he ran Universal Wrestling in 1977. Renee Reyes ran out of New York, New Independent Wrestling Association from 1984 to 1985. And then we got Dusty Rhodes, ran from 1968 to 2015 in Tampa, Florida, under PWF, and Marietta, Georgia, under TCW, which was my old wrestling promotion, and then Professional Wrestling Federation, 1989 and 91, and then Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling from 2000 to 2003. Mine didn't mean that. And then we got Vince Risco, ran from 1951 to 1977 in Canton, Ohio. And then Red Roberts ran in Boca Raton, Florida, Global Wrestling in 1986 to 1988. And then we got Henry Robinson ran in Cleveland, Ohio Championship Wrestling in 1982. Then we got here Johnny Rods. Johnny Rodriguez started running in 1964 in Brooklyn, New York, and Champ IWF from 1986 to 1990 with the World of Unpredictable Wrestling from 2007 to current.
Yes.
And then we got Henry Rogers, who started running in 1963, stopped in 1987, ran in Missouri. And then we got Bob Roop, started in 1969, stopped in 1988, ran out of Knoxville, Tennessee, All-Star, Boca Raton, Florida, Global. Global. And All-Star Championship Wrestling from 79 to 80 and Global Wrestling from 87 to 88, Bob Roop. David Rose ran out of Arizona with Real Deal Pro Wrestling in 2002.
Because they're still going.
Yeah, then there was Bob Ross running out of Virginia with American Championship Wrestling in 1978. Then Nelson Royal ran Nelson Combs from 1949 to 1991 in Mooresville, North Carolina, Atlantic Coast Wrestling. That was from 88 to 91. And then we have Bert Rudy, ran from 1933 to 1968. Wolverine Wrestling from 1956 to 1976. And then we got Tony Rumble, ran from 1989 to 1999 in Boston, Massachusetts. A Century Wrestling Alliance from 89 to 97. And then the NWA New England from 97 to 1999. And then we got Jim Ryan, who ran from 84 to 85 in in Springfield, Massachusetts.
No, you had it right the first time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did I?
That
Universal Wrestling Federation from 85 to 90. Woodbridge,
I don't know
New
why he's
Jersey.
separate, because he would have been with Dennis Galam. They were partners.
Right. It's a shame he stopped. And then we have Muskie Sallow, 1985 to 1985. He ran in Springfield, Massachusetts under the Northeast Wrestling Federation, 84 and 85.
NEWF, I remember that.
Right. Okay. And then we have Mike Sampson under, ran in Virginia under United Wrestling Association, 89 to 95. And then we have Raul Sanchez, who ran in 80 and 81 in Wyoming for Rocky Mountain Wrestling, 80 and 81. And then we have Dino Sana, who started wrestling in 1981 and from Colmar, Pennsylvania, with the Worldwide Wrestling Alliance in 1981, the one we all know and love. Yep. And then we have Tony Santos Sr., started running in 1960, stopped in 1975. He was out of Boston, Massachusetts with Big Time Wrestling from the 60s to 1975.
Wow.
Then we got Angelo Savoldi, ran from 1985 to 1995 from Boston, Massachusetts, International World Class Championship Wrestling from 85 all the way to 95.
Wow.
And then we got Mario Savoldi, who ran in 1985, IWCCW in Boston, Massachusetts, IWA, Carolina, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Maine, NWA, International World Class Championship Wrestling from 85 to 95, and then International Wrestling Association in 2008, and NWA on fire in 2008. So Mario Savoldi getting quite a bit involved. Then we got Terry Scholl, who ran from 1980 to 1995 in Chicago, Pro Wrestling International 1985 to 1995. And then we got Leonard Schwartz, ran from 1950 to 1955 in Chicago, NWA Chicago. And then we have George Scott, who ran from 1948 to 1992 in Charlotte, North Carolina, as the North American Wrestling Association South Atlantic Pro Wrestling from 1990 to 1992. Then we got Ed Sharkey, a familiar name, ran in 1985 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Pro Wrestling America from 1985 to 1996. And then we got Larry Sharp, 1974 to 2017, Woodbury, New Jersey, World Wrestling Association. He ran from 1989 to 1998. Eric Shaw was from Culver City, California, ran the International Wrestling Federation from 86 to 90. Roy Shire ran from 1950 to 1981 in San Francisco, California, the American Wrestling Alliance, 61 to 68, and then NWA Big Time Wrestling from 68 to 81. And then we got Dean Silverstone, who ran from 58 to 78 in Seattle, Washington, under Superstar Championship Wrestling from 73 to 78. And then we got Herb Simmons, who ran out of Springfield, Illinois, Southern Illinois Championship Wrestling from 84 to 92. Then we got Ron Sinkler. Yeah, all right. 1977 and 1995, he ran out of Tampa, Florida, with the Intercontinental International Championship Wrestling Alliance from 89 to 95. Long run. And then we got Ken Spence out of Greensboro, North Carolina, ran the International Wrestling Alliance from 79 to 97. New Dimension Wrestling from 97 to 2005.
I worked for them.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Then we got Ted Stanley from New Jersey, who ran Eastern Wrestling Alliance in 1985.
Wow.
And we got Dennis Stetcher, who ran in 1952 to 1959 out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, the Boxing and Wrestling Club, 52 to 59, and then NWA Minneapolis. And then we got Dale Stepp. He ran Big Time Wrestling Promotion in 1992 until 1992. Then we got James Strange out of Knoxville, Tennessee, running Southern States Championship Wrestling from 86 to 91, and NWA Rocky Top in 2005. Then we got Ben Sternberg from Rochester, American Wrestling Association from 1960 to 1985. John Summers ran out of Ohio, Tri-State Wrestling from 85 to 86. And then we got Paul Swinger, who ran in Easton, Pennsylvania, East Coast Wrestling Federation from 83 to 84. Then we got Lowell Takis from Bainbridge, Georgia, ran Star Cavalcade in 1988. We got Sue Takis, also Bainbridge, Georgia, Star Cavalcade, 1988. Tugboat Taylor, Don Taylor, ran from 1980 to 2017.
Wow.
All Pro Wrestling. So shoot, 80 to 85. And then Mark Tendler ran from 1955 to 1986 with the World Wrestling Council. Max Thrasher ran from Hanover, Pennsylvania, ran the Atlantic Wrestling Federation from 1988 to 1993.
Too bad.
Yeah. And then D.A. Thunder, Don Adams, ran from California, the Pacific Coast Crown Championship Wrestling in 1987. Then we got Al Tomko, who ran from 1966 to 1989 in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Vancouver, British Columbia, as American Wrestling Association from 66 to 79, and then NWA All-Star Wrestling from Vancouver from 79 to 89. And then we got Alexander Turk, who ran from 46 to 66 in Winnipeg, Manitoba, the National Wrestling Alliance, 46 to 49, the National Wrestling Alliance, 49 to 60, the American Wrestling Association, 61 to 62, and then the National Wrestling Alliance again from 63 to 66. So, wow.
Didn't get along with anybody.
And then we got Jerry Vanover. He ran from Virginia, the All-American Wrestling Association from 88 to 96. Then we got Jack Viles. He ran from 1975 to 1977 from Massachusetts, New England Wrestling Alliance. That was for 2 years. Then we got Fritz Von Erich. He ran from 1958 to 1990 in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, NWA Big Time Wrestling from 66 to 1981, and then World Class Championship Wrestling from 81 to 1990.
Yeah.
Then we move on to Fred Ward, who ran from 1937 to 1984 in Macon, Georgia Championship Wrestling from 49 to 84. That's a big generation. Then we got Bill Wasserman, who ran in Minnesota, the Western Wrestling Association in 1988. And yeah, exactly. And then we got Bill Watts, who ran from 1963 to 1993 in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to Mid-South Wrestling from 79 to 86, and then the Universal Wrestling Federation from 86 to 87. One of my favorites, I know that.
Yeah.
And then we got Joe Weaver, who ran out of Ohio, the Great Lakes Wrestling Association from 89 to 94. Roy Welch, who ran in 1935 to 1977 from Nashville, Tennessee. NWA Mid-Atlantic, 53 to 77. And then we got James Wells, who ran out of North Carolina. It's a North American Wrestling Alliance from 80 to 99. And we got Sam Wells, who ran the United Wrestling Alliance in 1983. Dennis Wildberger ran from 1989 to 1993 in Baltimore as Wrestling Independent Network.
Yes, I remember that.
From 1989 to 1993. And then Eddie Williams ran from 1963 to 1985 in St. Paul. American Wrestling Association from 63 to 85.
Wow.
David Woods ran in Knoxville, Tennessee, U.S.A. Wrestling from 1987 to 1988. Ed Zahn ran in York, Pennsylvania from 1983, and ran Atlantic States Wrestling Alliance, Mid-Atlantic Wrestling Alliance from 89 to 91, Universal Independent Wrestling from 91 to 94, and then American Commonwealth Wrestling from 93 to 1995. So, and then now we're moving on to the modern era, 1990s to present. This selection is notable professional wrestling promoters from the collapse of the NWA territory in the 1990s up to the 21st century. So Roger Bashir ran in North Carolina, the National Wrestling Federation from 93 to 97. Kevin Akers ran in Tennessee under Cumberland Wrestling Council from 91 to 99. Chris Adams ran from 1978 to 2001. I didn't know that. In Dallas, Texas, World Class Championship Wrestling, 1993. Dan Adams ran in Wichita, Kansas, American Championship Wrestling from 1997 and 1998. Don Adams ran in Reading, Pennsylvania, as Penn York All-Star Professional Wrestling from 1996 to 1999.
Wow.
Richard Adcock ran in Mission, Texas, World Class Wrestling Federation from 95 to 96. And then Shelby Adcock ran from 1961 to 1993 in Central Kentucky. Tri-State Wrestling. Wow. That's amazing. And then Edward Athrens ran from 89 to 98 in Los Angeles, California under American Independent Wrestling Alliance, 1989 to 1998. We got Skandar Akbar ran from 1962 to 2010 in East Texas. Superstars of Wrestling was from 98 to 2001. That would be currently remembered.
You have to imagine a lot of these
long times.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of these had TV because we would have seen it. If they're on for 20 years,
Right.
we would have seen something.
Absolutely. Then we got David Allen from Wilmington, North Carolina, that ran Coastal Carolina Wrestling Alliance, Carolina Wrestling Federation from 91 to 94. And then we move on to Terry Allen, who ran in Reading, Massachusetts, Big Time Wrestling in 2006. Roland Alexander, who ran from 1991 to 2013 in California, as Pacific Coast Sports from 91 to 95, and All Pro Wrestling from 95 to 2013. Mm-hmm. And then we move on to William Almus, who ran from 1994 to 2002 in Newport Richey, Florida, as World Professional Wrestling Federation from 94 to 2000. And then we have Mark Amaro, who ran in 1991 in Rhode Island under Power League Wrestling 1991. Oh, look.
Hey, look at this.
Oh, and who do we have here?
All right.
And then we have myself, Angel Amoroso.
All right.
The years 1994 to 1997. Technically, it was 1993 to 1998, but okay. Out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, under Tri-County Wrestling 94 to 97. Right. So, yay, that's me. I'm finally being acknowledged for one thing, a promoter, but still. Let's move on to managers and valets and see if they put me in there.
Go down to C. Am I not in there? I'm going to be pissed off.
Let's see. Let's read through. Cliff Anderson, 1990 to 2004, Tampa, Florida, Florida Wrestling Alliance. Okay. And then we got Lars Anderson, 1965. Honolulu, Hawaii, World League Wrestling from 96 to 2000. Christopher Annan, he started running in 96 at Kings Mountain, North Carolina, the New Age Championship Wrestling, 1998 to 1999. And then we got Joshua Annan ran Kings Mountain, North Carolina, New Age Wrestling from 98 to 99. And then we got Afa Anoy, 71. He started in Allentown, Pennsylvania, World Wrestling, in 1998 to current. And then we have Jim Anthony from Columbus, Georgia, in United Championship Wrestling from 1998 to 2002. And then we have Tom Anthony, and he runs in Connecticut under WrestlePalooza 1997. And Tony Anthony also did a 1980 show in Knoxville, Tennessee, under Tennessee Mountain Wrestling. Also says he did it in 2001. Paul Alberstein did shows from 1994 to 1996 in Chicago as American Wrestling Federation. Central and, no, that's something different. And then Chad Appling out of Kentucky ran Central Wrestling Federation from 97 to 2000. Let's see. Richard Arpin ran from Virginia, NWA of West Virginia from 1998 to 2002, NWA Tri-State from 98 to 2007. I guess a new Tri-State.
Yeah.
Then we got Kim Armplitt, ran in 2015 from Florida, Ignite Wrestling, 2015. And then we have Bill Ash, started running in 1972 in Paris, Arkansas, International Continental Pro Wrestling from 95 to 99, and then Global Pro Wrestling from 99 to 2006. Then we got Mark Watkins, started running in 89 from North Carolina as Independent Championship Wrestling, and that's from 92 to 2005. And then we have Marty.
Oh yeah, I worked for them. That's
Marty Alcala
or something. It's
Okay. Yeah, Levittown, Pennsylvania, Ultimate Wrestling Federation from 1991 to 2002. Okay, and then we have Aviles, Philadelphia, Grand Wrestling Alliance from 1997 to 1999. Aviles actually, I gave my TCW to Aviles, and he continued on with that, after that. So, and then we got Linda Bade from Honolulu, Hawaii, Hawaii Championship Wrestling from 2003 to 2008. And then we got Howard Badecker from 1992 to 1993. He promoted in Arizona as Inner West Wrestling Federation. And then we got Joey Baglia from Chicago, promoted American Wrestling Federation from 1995 to 1996. We got Bob Bailey from New York, United States Wrestling Federation, 95 to 2000. And then we got Ron Barber, ran in 1994, Portland, Oregon, under Oregon Professional Wrestling Federation. And then Sandy Barr, who ran from 1957 to 2007 in Portland, Oregon, under Championship Wrestling U.S.A., 92 to 97, which should be considered the only real promoter in Portland. Then we have Jeremy Barron, who promoted in the year 2000 in Massachusetts under Eastern Wrestling Alliance in 2003. Don Basher, where Ron Owens promoted a show in 1985 in Indiana under Wild Championship Wrestling Outlaws. And I think they had one in 97 as well, as it says that. Yeah. And then Harold Bass promoted in North Carolina under Atlantic Coast Championship Wrestling from 97 to 2003. And then we move on to Chris Bassett out of Wisconsin, ran New Age Wrestling from 89 to 97, and then Packerland Pro Wrestling in 1998. Then we got Rick Basserman, ran in 1985 from California, the Ultimate Pro Wrestling, 1998 to 2007.
Yeah, he came up with the Blade Runners, Sting and
Ultimate Warrior. Yeah, and then we got David Bouchon. He ran in 1999 in North Carolina under NWA Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. And then we move on to Court Bauer, who ran in 1998 in Philadelphia under Major League Wrestling, 2002 to 2005. I've never heard of that, to be honest with you. Then we got Fred Baxter, Memphis, Tennessee, Cable Championship Wrestling from 1994 to 1996. And then we got James Beard from 1995 to 1997. He ran in Dallas, Texas as Confederate Wrestling Association from 95 to 96, and then Continental Wrestling Alliance from 96 to 97. So I guess he figured to change the name.
Yeah, you probably couldn't even call it Confederate today.
Exactly. And then we got Ed Beckley, ran from Bridgeport, Texas. Bad Boys of Wrestling from 1998 to the year 2000. And then Bill Behrens ran from Nashville, Tennessee, MCW, out of Cornella, Georgia, the NWAWN, NWAWS, Music City Wrestling, 97 to 98, and then NWA Worldwide, 98 to 2000, and NWA Wildside, 2000 to 2005, to put it simply. And then we move on to Joe Benkowski, running out of Minnesota, the Northern Premier Wrestling from 95 to 98. Then we got Rod Bell. Let's see, he ran out of Hammond, Indiana, New Wave Wrestling Association from 1996 to 1999. We got Andrew Bellamy out of North Carolina, who ran the, Coastal Carolina Wrestling Alliance and Carolina Wrestling Federation from 1991 to 1994. And then we got Don Belt, who ran out of Kentucky, Eastern U.S. Championship Wrestling from 92 to 94. And then we got Scott Bikely, ran out of Jacksonville, Florida, the Insane Wrestling Alliance from 96 to 2003. Big Slam from 1989 to 2020 in Gloucester, New Jersey, and their Slam Championship Wrestling 2010 to 2012. And then we got Randy Blake, Providence, Rhode Island. He ran Mayhem Independent Wrestling from 98 to 2000. And then we got the Blue Meanie, ran in 1995 in Philadelphia under Propane Wrestling, 2002 to 2005. I beg to differ, but actually it should be under Jasmine St. Clair because it was her. Yes.
BPW, yeah.
And then we have Mark Bodie, who ran from 1993 to 1994 in York, Pennsylvania, as an American Commonwealth Wrestling in 1993 and 1994. Such a tragic loss, Mark. And then we got Mike Bonamino, or maybe I'm saying it wrong, but he promoted out of Illinois in the World Wrestling Association from 1999 to the year 2000. Then we got Booker T. Started promoting in 1989 in Houston, Texas, Pro Wrestling Alliance from 2006. I guess it coincides with his school and seminars and whatnot. Yeah. And then we got Lou Bordeaux, who started in 1994, promoting out of Massachusetts for Universal Championship Wrestling in 1994. And then we got Joel Andrew Bouchard out of Maine, who does Top Quality Wrestling from 2007 to 2012. Then J.J. Bowers from Fort Wayne, Indiana, does Championship International Wrestling Alliance from 98 to 99. Cody Boynes from 1992 from New Hampshire does the Universal Championship Wrestling. And then Gerald Bradbury from Fairfield, Ohio, promoted Real Deal Wrestling from 97 to 99. And then Mark Brady out of Georgia did Powerhouse Wrestling in 1994. Let's see. Steve Bradley promoted from 1991 to 2008, the Dover in New Hampshire area, Wrestling Federation of America from 2003 to 2004. And then we got Kevin Brannon from Alabama, IWA Deep South, 2005. Marlene Bregel from West Mifflin, Pennsylvania. Penn Atlantic Wrestling, 1997 and 1998. And Victory World Wrestling, 1998 to 1999.
Wow.
I got to say, I've never heard of that.
Nope.
And then we have Bubba Brewer, Ken Brewer, started promote shows in 1998, the Commodore, Pennsylvania, Allied Powers Wrestling Federation, 2003 to 2011. And then we got Sean Brockmole with New American Wrestling from 1993 to 1994. Then we got Don Brody from Cleveland, Mississippi, the South's Greatest Wrestling Fans from 98 to 99. And then NWA Mississippi 99 to current, I assume. John Brody from Florida did Florida Wrestling Alliance from 94 to 95. Donald Brower did the year 2000 in North Carolina, United Professional Wrestling Association, 2005. Bill Brown did Cutler Ridge, Florida, Sunshine Wrestling Federation from 91 to 98 and Florida Championship Wrestling in 1998.